on? YouTube, Wraithyn here. As most of you know, the Season 8 SPL rosters were leaked today. Hindu Man pressed the wrong button and ruined months of planning and preparation, and now we're here. So as the resident reviewer of all things Smite related, I gotta weigh in with my 2 cents. I will say I am a bit biased. I am good friends with a number of the guys that are playing and that aren't playing. And I know a little bit more about what's going behind the scenes that I don't really want to expose for the sake of the people involved. But I'm going to try and do my best to give you guys a little bit of insight into these rosters. And we'll see what you think. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Also, like, subscribe, follow, comment, build a statue of me, whatever you want. Hang a poster of me on your wall. Think about me at night. That's fine. I'm trying to grow my YouTube, and it's all helpful. So let's dive right in. It's prime time, baby. Let's go. Blame Futura, thank you for the resub. Whoops. As you can see, I'm doing this live I'm doing this live for efficiency's sake, so we got the notifications going off in the background. Anyway, first up is Valhalla Valkyries. This is solo Ducky, jungle Johnny, mid Zeros, support Raffer, and ADC Emilito, coached by Tigress. This is the first, like, I would call it a question mark roster. Just because, you know, we have a couple people re-entering or entering the league, or we've got, you know, Johnny entering the league, Zeros re-entering the league. Raffer was retired and then I guess got an offer that he couldn't refuse. Emilito's re-entering the league. And then Ducky is back after an underwhelming season 7 on his team. That being said, I actually think these guys have a lot of potential. You got veterans like Raffer. You've got, you know, arguably some of the best players in the world in Zeros and Johnny. You know, my only concern with this team is really the team dynamic itself. You know, there's some egos on these teams, or what seem to be egos on these teams. And we've heard in the past, I think, you know, I'd like to see if Zeros kind of comes back into the SPL this year with a better attitude than it was said that he had the last time he played. I think if they could really gel as a team, they're going to be one to watch out for. The coaching spot's a little confusing for me with Tigress. My guess is she's probably going to fill more of like a manager role, or making sure these guys have what they need, or facilitated for what they need. I think they've got enough experience in Raffer and Emil alone to know what they need to do without the help of an outside coach. And I think Tiggy's probably going to be there mostly as moral support, and probably to spend time with Raffer, given what happened last year. Moving on to the Olympus Bolts. This is basically Team Renegade, but we're Team Renegades, but we're picking up a new solo laner. Variety got the boot, and they picked up Haddix. Haddix has had kind of a weird flirtation with the SPL. It seems like he's always on decent SML teams or SEC teams, whatever you want to call it. He's had some issues in the past where he can't keep his mouth shut and ends up getting him banned or fined from things. But I understand that he's friends with some of the folks on this roster, so maybe they're going to gel a little bit better than Variety did and SOT did. I think these guys, you know, they played fairly well. They had their hot and cold moments, and I think, you know, you think of it like old Trifecta, right? Or, you know, some of the older teams that went on to be successful. Sometimes it takes kind of that building year to be able to really drive results, and we'll see if that happens for them. The Tartarus Titans, Benji, Scary D, Paul, Aurora, Cyclospin with Cherry coaching. And that's Benji and Solo Scary and Jungle. Paul in mid, Aurora and support, Cyclo and ADC. This sounds like a good roster on paper. My only issue with it, and I like Scary D and I think he's a good guy, is this idea of a role swap. There are guys out there in the minor league that have been, and I can't really think of any off the top of my head. You know, when these rosters were coming together and we heard about jungle role swaps, you know, I immediately thought of like Layers and Johnny. But they're in now. But there's guys out there that have been grinding jungle for the last 5 years, are insane players, GM every season type players that like don't get their shot because they're not a former pro player. And, you know, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there's players out there that have put in the work. And this always seems like one of those moves where it's like Smite Friends League. You know what I mean? And the roster gets in. Yeah, sure. Scary's a former world champion, but not in the jungle, right? So the question is, from my perspective, what's better? A world champion solo laner that's now switching to a completely different role during a completely different meta, or somebody who's been jungling for the past 5 years and has really put in the effort and has proven themselves time and time again. Mollusk is a good one. Kurmi is a good one. There's a couple out there. I think, what isn't Jinkubang or Elion. Great junglers out there. Do I think they're better than Scary in jungle? Absolutely. Do I think Scary is an amazing player that could probably learn the role? Definitely. But this is just one of those instances. I have a lot of gripes with the way that rosters are decided in general, with this whole like pitch your team bullshit, frankly, that has gone on since I've been a part of Smite. It allows too much for players that are friends with people on teams to get into the league versus those that aren't. I'm not saying that's the case with Scary D, but it certainly seemed that way last year. And we saw the results of that with a few others. But hopefully it works out for these guys. We'll see if Scary D can make the transition. My guess is that it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks tops. And if he's not cutting it, they'll get rid of him. Yeah, weakened. No, I'm just kidding. I think Kurt would do well this season. I'm not even kidding. Next up is the Camelot Kings. Pop a variety in the solo lane. Twig moves back to jungle. Big Man takes in mid. Genetics in the support role. And Netrioid with Biggie coaching. This one is another interesting team. You've got Variety, who is moved or removed from the old Renegades roster. You got Twig finally hanging him up in mid. Big Man Tings back at it again. Genetics comes into the support role, and then Netrioid is no longer on Sanguine. Like, what? This is probably like the biggest shakeup roster out of all of them. The only thing that's consistent here is Tings, right? That being said, Harry's a great solo laner.
You came back.
Thank you, Destiny, for the resub. Yeah, the Camelot Kings. Anyway, Variety's a fantastic solo laner. I think Twig, he had a good year in mid last year, but I think he's definitely a jungler. I think Big Man Tings is going to rely on that kind of setup jungler that Twig brings. Genetics, I've always said, is Genetics is a really good student of the game. He's always trying something new. He's always trying to find the next thing, the next god that nobody expects, the next build that nobody expects. I have a lot of respect for him as a player, and I think a team like this will really excel having somebody like him on their team. I think the issue that they're going to have is being able to tell Genetics, like, no, let's just play the stuff that works. And he's like, nah, man, on her support, fantastic, right? And they're going to have to like rein that back in, I think. Netrio is the big question mark for me. To see an entire team like Sanguine come back into the league without Net is like that throws red flags for me, right? That means something happened there. I didn't think Net played particularly poorly. He wasn't necessarily a very outspoken or I'll call it toxic player. It was always Shinto and not even Yarkor, but Shinto and Rongyu were always the guys talking shit. Net just kind of showed up and played his game. So something definitely happened there. I don't know what it was. And that's why Net is looking for a new team. But I'm glad he found a home on the Camelot Kings. Biggie, one of the best coaches that Smite's ever seen, in my opinion. That guy is an absolute anchor and is so consistent at keeping teams grounded and playing well and getting back to what they know how to do. I think he's going to be a great kind of a rock for these guys to lean on, especially with the big shakeup. Moving on, Solar Scarabs. Solar Troll Layers, Baronic, Inbound, Zapman, and Slaney. First of all, Slaney's a fantastic coach. He's been a part of rival rosters 2 years in a row. Those guys have done extremely well, so he knows what it takes to win. Zapman, 2-time back-to-back world champion ADC. He's been playing a lot, and he's been fragging. I'm glad to see him back on another team. And as a veteran, which is what I think, these the rest of the Solar Scarabs really need. Inbound, he lives with me, so I'm not going to talk any shit about him because he's going to come over here. But I think Bobby is one of the most underrated players from
happy to see me
from last year. Rise, thank you for the gifted sub. I think Inbound's one of the most underrated players from last year. His improvement as the year went on. He played a little hard W key in the beginning, got his hand slapped a little bit, and I think by the end of it, he was one of the best supports in the league, and you can tell that because he's back this year. Baronic is a great mid laner. Don't get me wrong. I think this, like Hazer alluded to when he was doing his review, I think this was meant to be Krim. And then when Krim got the news that he would lose his scholarship if he couldn't play, a lot of the mid lane talent, I believe, was kind of sucked up. But that being said, Baronic is a fantastic mid laner. I think, as far as people that you could pick up in his place, there's nobody really that comes to mind where I'm like, oh, yeah, get that guy. And Baronic is an awesome addition to this team. Layers and SOT, both phenomenal mechanical players, have a great mind for the game. I think, they're kind of that young personality that's going to get reined in by Slaney and Zap. And I think, I think a lot of times when you see like super teams or, things like that, there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of personalities that just don't really mesh well together. I think you got the two veterans that know what it takes to win. Between Zap and Slaney, you got a real leader in Bobby. Bobby's a very type A leadership style. And then you've got the executors, the guys who just go out and make it happen in Baronic, Layers, and Solar Troll. I think these guys, people are kind of memeing on them, but these guys, this is going to be the team to watch out for. Obviously, again, I'm biased, but I think they're going to overperform or outperform people's expectations. The Jade Dragons is up next. We got Final Kid, Solo, Sanford Soccer, Jungle, Herwin mid, Polar Bear Mike in support, Panda Cat in the ADC role, and Kabam coaching. This is a nuts roster. I love this roster. They basically traded Twig for an actual mid laner. And they're gonna try and get Tyler his win. Not much to say here. This is rival, make it down to the goal line, add a little bit here. Take a little sprinkle of a mid laner and put it into the mixture and add a great coach in Kabam. And I think they're going to do absolutely fantastically this year. I think the Jade Dragons are probably in my top two teams to perform this year. All right, let's see here. Next up is the Oni Warriors. This is kind of the super team of the year for me. You got Nika in solo, Cuba Fred in jungle, Dardas in mid, Neil Ma support, Vote ADC, and Chuckles, the two-time SPL world champion coach, coaching. You have three recent back-to-back world champions in the entire roster. You've got Vote, who's been to the finals a couple of times. You've got Dardes, who's an amazing player. You got Nika, who's an amazing player. These guys are going to be the one to watch to really knock out the top end of the stat sheet. I think they're going to do a great job. There's really not much to say. They're excellent players. Are they going to mesh well? Yeah, I have a feeling they all know how to get the job done. And Chuckles is a great coach. There's really not much to say here. And then the Leviathans. This is Sanguine minus Netrioid with a role swap where Yarkor is going to ADC. This is another one of those situations where I think it's Smite Friends League, right? If you're telling me you couldn't find a single other ADC that performs at an extremely high level like Yarkor, like Net does, you had no choice but to swap Yarkor from solo to pick up, Julio. Again, we'll see. If Yarkor is really the mechanical genius that he is and understands the game as well as he does, maybe we'll see these guys do well. But this is another one where I'm skeptical and I'm flagging this as, like maybe they'll do okay because of the role swap. I think Yarkor is going to have a tough time adjusting to ADC. ADC is vastly different this year than it has been any other year. Julio is a great player. He's done really well in the minor leagues and in Europe. And then Panatom, Shito, and Rungyu, that kind of core three are all great players. I feel like we need to see more out of Panatom this year if we want to see these guys back at the top of the list. But yeah, there's probably about a dozen ADCs I would have rather seen in this slot other than Yarkor. Hoppo's got a good point. Benny, Stu, Guy J. You know, the fact that Yarkor just knew these guys and had played with them before is the only reason he's here on this list, is because he has a reputation with the team, which I find absolutely shitty and horrible with the whole way the league is run. But that's really, I mean, I could go on a whole diatribe about why putting together rosters is just the worst way to do this, but nobody wants to listen to that. Stop by my stream and ask me about it, and I'll tell you all my thoughts. But anyway, guys, that's the end of the list. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. I'm going to be putting out more SPL content as the year goes on, so be sure to check it out. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.